Good evening, you're listening to The True Tank and I'm your host, The Tank. If this is your first time listening to The True Tank, a big welcome. If you're a repeat listener, welcome back. Apologies in advance, my voice may sound a little bit off tonight. I've had an ear infection which has affected my voice in a really weird way. It sounds like I'm losing my voice, or my voice kind of drops in pitch or tone. I had an ear infection, went to the doctor, and it turns out it was actually pretty badly infected. It didn't actually hurt, so I didn't think it was much of a big deal. It was a bit itchy, but it turns out it was red and inflamed and pussy. So I've had to have antibiotics and eardrops. I think I might have figured out what has been causing the itchy ears and the infection. I've noticed some tears and some wearing on my headphones. I didn't actually notice it until the other night, but they've kind of worn on the inside facing ear pads. One's got a tear in the lining, and it's been pretty hot here over the last couple of months, so I've probably been sitting here recording, sweating, and all the bacteria and germs have been going into the foam because it seems to be the left ear, and that's the one with the tear in the lining. I've had that before with sport headphones, but I didn't really think too much of it because I don't work out in these headphones. These are purely for editing and recording. But anyway, that's one problem solved. Now I've got to replace the ear cups. Just before we get into tonight's show, rest in peace, Pope Francis. I watched the funeral last night. No matter what you might think of the late pontiff, he was a good man that did a lot of good on a global scale, and I think a lot of his good deeds are only really being appreciated now that he has passed. So rest in peace to Pope Francis. In other news, the Live Communism will be recording very soon. If you've listened to the previous episodes, you will know I've had some massive computer issues and I've had to delay that. The first recording session should be taking place in the next couple of weeks. I do want my voice sounding better than it does at the moment. Part 1 should be out. I'm going to aim for late June, end of June, start of July. At this stage, it's been put on the back burner a little bit because while I've had to transfer all my old files and episodes and scripts from my hard drives, I found, my voice is cracking a bit, a half-completed script for Bioweapons. It was Bioweapons Part 4. It's been in the back of my mind for a long time. Whenever I start to think about future and upcoming episodes, I always remember that I started this back in 2021 and I haven't finished it yet. It kind of just got pushed to the side when I was looking at other things, and then I started doing the Live Communism, started getting involved in the research in that, so I didn't have time to finish it, and yada yada yada. Fast forward a couple of years and it's still not done. But I'm pleased to say I have found that episode. It took a long time. It took about 2 weeks going through multiple hard drives to try to find the fucking thing. It was labelled as a Part 3 script for Bioweapons, and I couldn't find it. I had to go through those scripts multiple times to try and find it because Part 3 had the start of Episode 4. So when I was reading it, I was reading the same thing, thinking it was the same script, but really it was two separate ones that were just kind of mashed up into one file labelled Part 3. But I'm nearly, at the time of recording, I'm nearly finished that. I'm in the end stages of it, and it's so far 27 pages. Then I would like to try to finish off Bioweapons in Bioweapons Part 4, Bioweapons Part 5 I should say, and maybe a Part 6. So if you haven't listened to it, Parts 1 to 3 are available now. I did make an error on my Instagram post. I did put Parts 1 to 4 available now on the artwork, but it's been so confusing going back and forth checking these scripts. I can't even fucking remember what episodes I've done and what episodes I haven't. A History of Bioweapons Parts 1 to 3 is available now wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm doing artwork for all my old episodes. I've got Bioweapons Part 1 and 2 done. The American Civil War one's pretty cool. I like that one. I also like the simplicity of Part 1. Part 3 is going to be a bit different. I've slowly added some artworks to older episodes, so if you haven't seen them, head on over to my Instagram page, check them out, or you can see them on Apple or Spotify. or wherever else you listen to podcasts. But Instagram, you probably appreciate them better if you see them as Instagram posts. So, news completed. Let's get into tonight's episode. This is going to be another weekly tank episode and another film review. The film in question is Ryan Coogler's Sinners. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Coogler or Coogler. I didn't really know a hell of a lot about this film before I saw it. I've seen a couple of ads for it. I didn't see a trailer for it. I don't watch trailers anymore unless I'm actually in a theatre. They give way too much away and they're a pain in the ass. I do occasionally watch some trailers, like Jurassic World Rebirth and a couple of other films like that, but I don't make it a point to go out of my way to watch every trailer like I used to. I like to be surprised, especially Marvel and superhero movies. They always give way too much away. So I stayed away from Sinners. It didn't really interest me because I didn't really know much about it. Then I started to find out a bit more about it. It's a period film and it's a horror film. I'm not a big fan of horror films, so that probably didn't really spark my interest. But it was about vampires, which I think is probably one of my favourite horror genres. And movie monsters. The other selling point was two Michael B. Jordans. As I said, I didn't see the trailer, so I had no idea he plays twins. And when I found that out through ads and some interviews and stuff, I thought, okay, that might be pretty interesting. It's a cool thing when you have an actor play two different characters, like Tom Hardy in Legend, or who else has played twins? And the many other actors that have played twins over the years. So on Thursday, I headed to my local theatre to see Sinners. It's got a pretty good score. Pretty much everything else out at the moment sucks. I'm not going to fucking see Snow White because it looks fucking atrocious. Minecraft does not interest me one bit. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's episode. This is the Weekly Tank, episode 5, episode 75 of the True Tank, Sinners Review. But before we get into the episode, a quick podcast trailer.
There's a world beyond what we see, full of whispers, shadows, and encounters that defy explanation. The paranormal, the unexplained, the mysteries hidden in plain sight. I'm Heather, your guide through the unknown. Together, we'll navigate chilling encounters, impossible coincidences, and the stories that stretch the boundaries of reality. Through expert interviews, deep dive discussions, and co-host explorations, we'll uncover the science, the speculation, and the personal experiences that shape the paranormal landscape. Have you got a story of your own? Send it in. We'll feature first-hand accounts from listeners who've experienced the impossible, adding their voices to the mysteries we seek to understand. From haunted locations to cryptid sightings, from UFO phenomena to messages channeled from beyond, each episode peels back another layer of the veil. Fasten your seatbelt, expand your thinking, and cross the threshold with Beyond the Veil Australia. The veil is thinner than you think, and the search for answers is just beginning. Follow Beyond the Veil Australia on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube for exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and community discussions. Visit beyondtheveilaustralia.com to submit your paranormal experiences, explore past episodes, and connect with fellow truth seekers. Subscribe now and step beyond the ordinary into the unknown.
Sinners is directed by Ryan Coogler and stars Michael B. Jordan and Michael B. Jordan. So you get two Michael B. Jordans for the price of one. It also stars Delroy Lindo, one of the great character actors of all time, Jack O'Connell, Omar Benson Miller, Hailee Steinfeld, and Miles Caton. The story centers around twin brothers Smoke and Stack, played by Michael B. Jordan. The brothers have returned home to Mississippi in 1932 after moving to Chicago to work for some nefarious characters. And this background story about them working in Chicago is a little ambiguous. It's a bit mysterious. They're up to no good. They work for, I think, either the Italian or Irish mafia. This is during the Al Capone days in Chicago. They've come back home to open a music club, or nightclub essentially, in the Mississippi Delta. And just before we get too far into the episode, there will be spoilers from here on out, so if you haven't seen the film or you are planning on seeing it, I would advise you stop listening now. If you are continuing to listen past this point, you have been warned. So the film opens with a really cool prologue explaining the supernatural world Sinners is set in. Every once in a while, musicians and music comes along that is so powerful it basically transcends time and generations. And the talent of a certain musician can attract evil spirits and can thin the veil between the spirit world and the real world. Dark forces seek out the talent of these individuals and are attracted to the power that comes with the talent, probably the fame and the fortune and all of that, which I thought was a really interesting concept, especially in a horror film. And when the prologue kind of fills in the supernatural world the story is set in, it becomes very, very interesting right off the bat. And it sets up what is to come. It explains that the Native American, Native African, and American cultures all have a similar mythology about music attracting these evil spirits. And that's where we find ourselves right from the get-go. It's a very dark and interesting world, set in 1932 in the Mississippi Delta. I do like period films, especially horror films. I don't think period horror is done enough. And I just really love the unique world of Sinners. 1932, so it's after World War One, before World War Two. It's a weird time period, especially in America in the South. This is a time where Jim Crow is still happening, which makes up quite a bit of the backbone of the film. It was also really unique setting a horror film in Mississippi, because vampire films tend to be set in Europe or somewhere cold and dark where it's nighttime all of the time. And for about the first 30 to 40 minutes or so of the film, you completely forget you're watching a horror film, specifically a film about vampires. There is so much sun in the opening 40 or so minutes. The twins arrive back home in the Mississippi. They're driving a convertible Model T Ford or something like that. You get a cool intro to who these brothers are, what world they're living in, where they've come from, and why they've come back home. And there's two distinct personality traits between them. Stack is a bit more, I'd say, a bit more dodgy. He's definitely the scumbag out of the two. Smoke is a bit more aggressive, but also a bit more moral at the same time. He's definitely a deeper and darker character than Stack is. So they come home to the sunburnt Mississippi Delta. The sun is blazing in the sky. It looks to be pretty hot and sweaty. Definitely not the typical setting for a vampire film. This film does a really good job of throwing you off just what the fuck kind of movie you're actually watching. Are you watching a historical drama set in 1932? Are you watching a horror film? Is it a combination of the both, or is it even a bit of a musical? Because music plays a huge part in this film. It's one of the unseen characters. Sammy Moore, played by Miles Caton, is a blues musician. He's a talented guitar player and songwriter. He's the son of a preacher. His dad doesn't exactly approve of his musical ability or the fact that he's so interested in guitar and music. And the opening few scenes where he stumbles back into the church and his father is asking for forgiveness from the devil, does a very good job at reinforcing this connection between music and dark forces that are attracted to it. It also made me start to question, is there something about Sammy? Is he connected to the devil in some way, or was he sent to Earth by the devil or something like that? He doesn't really want to follow in his father's footsteps. down the path of a preacher. He's much more interested in music. The background and setting of Sinners also helps create this world. It's another character, the sunburnt landscape, the attention to detail, the streets, the cars, the town in it is really detailed, and the railway station. I got a bit of a kick out of seeing that massive train pull into the station, similar to Big Boy. And if you don't know, I don't know if I've actually said this before, but I'm a massive steam train nerd. I love vintage steam and diesel trains, and seeing that massive cross-continental train pull into the station was really fucking cool. The town looks to be built around the railway as well. It's a very dry and dusty town. There's a lot of attention to detail. The shop fronts and stuff are really cool. It looks like a old school set where they would just build the shop fronts and the streets and make it look really busy and lived in. It adds to the authenticity. So Sammy, the young blues player, is cousins to Smoke and Stack. When Smoke and Stack arrive in town, they come and pick Sammy up, much to the caution of Sammy's father. They fill Sammy in on what they've been up to for the past couple of years. They're coming from Chicago. Something definitely smells fishy about this story. Sammy hasn't been outside Mississippi before, and he's a bit excited to hear these tales from the big city where the twins kind of shoot down this fantasy. He wants to get enough money from sharecropping to be able to leave Mississippi and take his music nationally, but they kind of shoot this down. They say something to the effect that Chicago is pretty much the same as Mississippi, except it doesn't have cotton fields, it has skyscrapers, or something to that effect. So the twins come back home, they're cashed up, they've got a truck laden with supplies that may or may not have been gotten by less than legal means. Their grand plan is to buy the old lumber mill on the edge of town. It looks to be out near a swamp somewhere. They buy the old lumber mill off of this dodgy looking southern gentleman called Hogwood, with plans of turning it into a nightclub for the residents of the town, which are mainly African American. Most of the town is involved in sharecropping. I actually don't really know a hell of a lot about it, but it's basically it was another scam, so they could own the farm or something like that, or they'll own the plantation, or they worked at a plantation and made like fuck all for picking cotton, and they got I think a share of the crop. I think hence the name sharecropping. But a majority of the money went to the plantation owner, who was usually a white business owner of some type. So it's a weird period that doesn't get shown on screen all that often. The movie doesn't explain that part as well. It's more focused on other things. So the twins split up. Stack goes into town to recruit some musicians. Smoke goes to the other end of town to get supplies and workers for the grand opening. Smoke goes to the grocery general goods store owned by the Chows, an Asian couple who have been living in the Mississippi Delta. He wants a sign made for the grand opening, as well as supplies of food and stuff like that. He also needs workers to work the bar and the casino part of the club. There's a cool scene where the daughter, Lisa Chow, he pulls out a stack of money, he wants a sign made up, and Bo Chow says, "Go get your mother," and there's this cool tracking shot of her walking across the street into the other general store across the road, also owned by the Chows, where the mother works. There are a couple of tracking shots in this movie. I do love a good tracking shot, as long as it's not too overdone. It adds a cool element to a film, I think. But unfortunately, I wanted more of the town. I wanted a bit more walking into shops and walking around the streets, but it was cool enough that the town itself did feel like another background character. It's got a really cool vibe to it. Looks very legit. Dusty red dirt streets, the old cars, the old shop fronts, lots of attention to detail, which I always enjoy. It also helps create this very real and believable world, because I think if they didn't pay so much attention to detail of the town and the time period, it would take you out of the world they're trying to sell you, because you couldn't get away with too much liberties, because it's a time, it's not really that long ago when you think about it, 1932. There's enough historical references for that time period to pretty much know how things were, so especially the cars and stuff at that time, and the clothes. So Stack heads to the train station to drum up some musicians, and this is where we're introduced to his ex, played by Hailee Steinfeld, and Delroy Lindo, who is the old alcoholic blues musician who plays a harmonica, who gets recruited to work at the club. Part of his deal is he got a certain amount of money per night and all the beer he could drink, all the Irish beer, which might be a little clue to the backstory involving the twins' time in Chicago. Delroy Lindo plays Delta Slim, so he joins Sammy and Smoke. Along the way, they recruit another member of the Motley Crew called Cornbread, played by Omar Benson Miller. Smoke also makes his way to the club, but detours to his old house, where we're filled in to a bit more of his backstory. We meet his ex, the hoodoo woman, Beatrice, played by Tenji L. Jackson, I think that's how you pronounce her name. It's during the opening kind of intro phase of the film, Twins' identity is fleshed out a bit more through the backstory. They've both got these exes, both of their relationships didn't work out. Smoke's morally a different person to Stack's. Stack's relationship is a bit more superficial and kind of goes one way, where he more or less does a runner after something happens with Mary, played by Hailee Steinfeld. Smoke, on the other hand, has come back to visit his ex due to losing a child. So this is about 45 minutes into the film, and you completely forget you're watching a vampire movie. And then we're dropped into the world of the supernatural with this very cool scene to the intro of the Irish vampire, I'll call him, played by Jack O'Connell. The vampire's name is Remick. He is on the run. He's being chased by Choctaw Indians. The things start to get very ominous now. The sun starts to go down, so the bright sun burnt world of the Mississippi Delta is now plunging into night, and the whole mood and atmosphere change from bright and sunny to very ominous and dark. He arrives on the doorstep of two backwards folk, let's call them. He pleads for help. He tells them a story to gain their trust and offers them 2 gold coins as payment. I did want a bit more with the Choctaw in it. I think you could have had another whole movie just from their perspective. They've been on the trail of a vampire. They've been hunting for a while, and Remick is their target. They've figured him out, that he isn't what he says he is, and they tell the occupants of the house not to let him in. They said it's very important, do not invite him in. Under any circumstances, he's not what he claims to be. So this brings us to opening night at the Brothers Club. I can't remember the name of it. There's lots of drinking, gambling, and eating going on. The club is also like a main character. It's kind of like Mimi's haberdashery from The Hateful Eight. That's pretty much the main character of the film. The atmosphere and the style of it, it's a very similar thing here. I wanted as much time in the club as possible. It's got a cool atmosphere. It's very rural and rugged and run down, and lots of rusted metal and recycled wood everywhere, but it's really fucking cool. The lighting's also really good. It's all dark, and everything's being lit by kerosene lanterns hanging on the walls, which is no way that would make it past a fire safety inspection or occupational health and safety these days. And it's around this point where these two worlds start to collide. The tension starts to build in a very deliberate, slow burn way. That's another thing I didn't mention. This film is very slow burn. You forget you're watching a vampire film, and then you get a nice little reminder, oh, that's right, this film actually has vampires in it. And it doesn't give too much away either. It deliberately draws things out as long as possible. And it's quite a lengthy film as well. I think it's about 36 minutes, something like that. So it's pretty decent length. It's not overly long. I think it was just long enough. Any longer, I think it probably would have dragged on a bit too long. But I think you definitely needed a bit of extra length compared to the standard vampire film. This film wouldn't have worked in 90 minutes or even 100 and something. it had to be 2.5 hours, I think, at least, to have that long drawn out intro where you get the backstory to the brothers and all the different characters they collect along the way. And then you get that realization that, oh, hey, you're actually watching a vampire film. Now this is going into a different phase of the film. Then comes the nightclub and the partying and the drinking, the dancing, the gambling. And this leads us to the cousin's blues performance. This is his first big performance in front of an audience, pretty much. And there's a really cool, trippy scene that has all these different styles of music colliding all at the one time. It's obviously set in 1932, but then you have what looks to be the guitarist from Earth, Wind and Fire, or a 70s funk band, just comes into frame with his sunglasses and blue and gold outfit, playing a blue electric Flying V guitar. Then a DJ pops up, a rapper, electric musicians, funk, traditional African, Chinese and indigenous musicians start popping up and going into the scene. So it's got this really cool mashup of these different styles of music, and like it says, music that is that good transcends generations, and you have all these similar talents all kind of flooding this one scene at the same time. And the music goes from blues, like the blues song is the backbone, but then you have electric and funk and hip hop all being mashed up into this one scene and this soundtrack. And it's really interesting. You think these styles shouldn't work together, but it does. It's a very unique sounding song, and it probably wouldn't have been that easy to try to come up with a song that actually sounded good using all those different elements from different times and styles of music. And that leads us into the next phase of the film. And once again, this scene has gone on for probably like 20 minutes or so, maybe 25 minutes, and you forget you're watching a vampire film. That is until the Irish Vampire and Co. turn up at the club's door, begging to be let inside. It's very creepy. They try to get inside. They can't just enter a building. They need to be invited in, and that goes back to like old, I think, vampire and like demon lore, where you have to invite the evil spirit in order for it to possess you or to do its thing. What's that urban legend about the black-eyed children? They turn up at your doorstep at like 3 o'clock in the morning asking to use a phone or to be let inside, and they always give you some like a random excuse why they need to come in. And if you invite them in, that's when the trouble starts. If you don't let them in, they fuck off and go to the next house. And this is kind of like that. These vampires need to be let in, hence why he offered 2 gold coins to the 2 hillbillies earlier in the film in order to get into the house. They were poor. He offers the money. The money is interesting. It's these 2 gold coins, and it reminds me of the gold Aztec coins from Pirates of the Caribbean, and that's what it looks like. I think it's Mayan or Aztec gold, because there's several references that the vampire Remick in particular is very old, from a different time, which could present a lot of spin-off opportunities if you were an enterprising producer wanting to get as much out of this film as possible. You could make many spin-offs from Sinners. So the vampires are trying to get inside. It's very sus and very sinister. They're trying way too hard to get in, and they're playing the nice card, and it's very creepy. And I found that in reality, when you meet someone who is just too nice or overly nice, it comes off as very fake and disingenuous, and you automatically have your guard up and you don't trust them, even though they're only trying to be nice, especially if it's someone you don't really know. And you meet them for the first time somewhere and they're just ultra fucking nice. It comes off really fucking creepy. For me anyway, I start to think, what the fuck is this person hiding? Why are they being so nice? What do they want? Are they trying to lure you to your death, or take your money, or lead you out to the alley where you get jumped by their friends and they steal your fucking wallet and car? I get very sus about people like that. And that's how this trio of vampires comes off. So Cornbread doesn't let him in. He gets Smoke and Stack. They arrive. They don't trust them. Smoke's wife starts to warn them about there's something not right with these people. Why do they want to be invited in? so badly, and she starts to fill in some of the supernatural blanks to the brothers. And when this doesn't really work, they try to bribe their way in with money using the same gold coins. In a previous scene, I think one of the exes, Hailee Steinfeld, tells Stack that if they keep running the club on this kind of budget, they'll be broke within a month. They've put all their money into this club and hiring all these people to help, and it needs to pay off, because there's another earlier scene where someone goes to pay for a beer. I think it's like $1 or something, or 60 cents, and he only has 30 cents and a couple of tokens, because I think some of the sharecroppers, and I think this is true, they got paid with tokens that they could only spend in town at certain stores to buy groceries and stuff like that. And she explains to him, this is going to be where most of your business comes from impoverished sharecroppers and people that don't have a lot of money. And they're going to come here to have a good time and drink, dance, and gamble their sorrows away, more or less. And that this is not Chicago. You can't just turn business away, and not everyone has deep pockets. And if you piss these people off long enough, then they're not going to come and support your business, which is true in life as well as fictional vampire movie set in 1932. This is about an hour into the film at this stage, probably a little over that, and we've only seen really one vampire so far. So tensions in the club are raised, and if future projections pan out, opening night might be the only night the club is open. They need to come up with a plan to get more revenue as quickly as they can. Mary comes up with a plan and tells Stack that she should go out and suss out these 3 weird white people that have turned up at the club wanting to get in. Mary is white as well and thinks she might be able to suss them out, and they might trust her in the hopes that they might get their shiny gold vampire coins. So she goes outside and finds the 3 vampires, who are pretty much sitting down on an old log just outside of the car park, outside of the club. The traveling trio of musicians claim that they've come up from Arkansas somewhere. They're touring around, playing at every club and place and venue they can find. Smoke and Stack's biggest concern is that they're white and they might not fit in, and that they should head to the town where they can find an establishment that plays more of their kind of music. They got some really good voices on them. It wouldn't surprise me if the 2 other actors playing the husband and wife were musicians in real life. Mary's tracked the family down. She's talking to them. They're giving off these real creepy cult vibes. They keep talking about... Remick keeps talking about family and love, and this recruitment drive spiel about getting people to come and join his family. It's very Charles Manson-ish. She doesn't seem to catch on that they're not quite who they say they are, and they're very creepy, because he's probably like the nicest vampire I've seen in a film ever. So meanwhile, things keep going in the club. Music keeps getting played. Mary returns to the club in some suspicious circumstances. Once again, she arrives and has to get invited in by Cornbread. She lures Stack off to a room by himself and turns him into a vampire, which isn't the biggest spoiler, because you see that in the trailer. You see the 2 Michael B. Jordans on the outside of the door. One's good and one looks like he's turned evil, which was a big giveaway. As I mentioned, I didn't see the trailer, but I imagine it probably would have been in the trailer as well, because if I saw that on a 30-second TV ad and knew that one of them was going to turn, I guarantee that would have been in the theatrical trailer as well. This is where the fun begins, and the film changes gears again into a full-blown vampire film. The brothers and Delta Slim pretty much shut down the party and send everybody home. They tell everybody to head to their vehicles and go home pretty much. Unfortunately, most of them get turned into vampires along the way. So things progress. Stack is reanimated into a vampire and wants to be let out of the door. Eventually this happens, and he runs out the same door as Mary out into the night. I'm not too up to date on my vampire lore, but technically both of them were invited in. Well, Stack was already inside, so why would they have to run off unless... It makes sense why Stack would have to run off, because he was already inside and technically wasn't invited in. But Mary had been invited in, and she probably could have overpowered and killed everybody in the room. But both of them run outside to join Remick in the ever-growing vampire army in the car park. I did like that invited in element. It was a very interesting element to put into a vampire film, because at this point vampire films have been done to death. Like, we've had every incarnation of vampire pretty much imaginable. I think maybe except for future vampires or space vampires, but that's probably been done at some stage. Blade had its twist on vampires, so did Underworld and Twilight and every other vampire film made in the past 70 years or so. I did really like that element that they have to be invited in and they can't just force their way into a building and turn everybody into vampires. It adds more suspense that way if they have to be invited in, because they have to try to manipulate their way in, so it creates more and more tension, which is what this film's greatest strengths are, is just building the tension, keep drawing things out, that slow burn, build the tension, then release it in an action scene right before going back to building more tension. Ryan Coogler does that very well in this film. This leads to a very tense scene with Cornbread trying to make his way into the club again. There's a lot of tense scenes where characters that have gone outside arrive at the door and try to convince everybody to be let back in. Sinners also blends a lot of different elements of many different folklores and elements of vampire films and stories, such as garlic. There's a very tense garlic scene in the nightclub where they have to pass around a clove to prove that they're not vampires. It's very tense, it's very cool. While some of these elements from traditional vampire films and stories are a bit cliche and a bit generic at this point, Sinners does it in a very original way. And they didn't go over the top and try to come up with some new vampire lore or some new gimmick that set this film apart from every other vampire movie that's ever been made. They mixed these elements together and presented them in a more original way. Yeah, garlic has been used in pretty much every vampire story, but the way Sinners does it is a bit more original than wearing a necklace made out of garlic. And some things they choose to focus on more than others. There's not really any scenes with holy water or anything in it. Wooden stakes still do the trick against these vampires. The people stuck in the club make weapons out of anything wood, out of chairs and tables. They start turning anything wooden into a stake and start preparing themselves for the eventual battle against the vampires outside. And then the tension keeps building. There's a cool scene with Stack at the door, and he tries to lure out his brother, using that emotional connection to try to fool him into coming outside. Mrs. Chow has a scene that's similar. A majority of the characters on the inside have some family member or a character or a connection on the outside that either wants to get in or draw them outside to join the quote-unquote family. And next up is one of the coolest scenes in the film, and I think probably one of the most original and coolest scene I've seen in a film in a very long time. You can hear singing coming from out in the car park, and the hero stuck inside the building look out into the darkness of the car park. Remick is leading a dance and sing-along to Rocky Road to Dublin. It was very unique, and I never thought I would hear Rocky Road to Dublin being played in a vampire film. They're all out in the car park dancing around, doing an Irish river dance style dance while singing Rocky Road to Dublin. That was really fucking cool, and it was very unexpected. It's at this point in the story, Smoke's ex fills everybody in about what they're dealing with. She calls them Haze or Hates or something like that. It's some type of like Louisiana bayou name for like a supernatural being like this. And then she fills everybody in that Remick and his followers are actually vampires. That has this connection back to the music. and she has a pretty good idea of how to stop them. And unfortunately for Mrs. Chow, her husband is on the outside. He gets stuck out there when the party is called off. He's trying to get her to come out, and I think Remick threatens the daughter. Mrs. Chow can't take it anymore and invites them in. Chaos ensues. Things get bloody very quick. The blood and gore isn't over the top like some horror films. I don't really think it had too much blood or violence in it at all. I mean, yeah, obviously it has blood and violence, but it's not like completely over the top. So the fight starts, the brothers go at it. A lot of vampires get taken out, and they seem to have a lot of blood when they get stabbed with the wooden stake, which is a bit polar opposite to most vampire films. A lot of vampire films, they just turn to ash or burst into flames or something like that. The survivors' numbers start to dwindle. The battle goes on and on and on. Sammy manages to escape, but is confronted by the head Irish vampire, who fills in the backstory about what he is. He explains something along the lines that, don't you want to live forever with us? Heaven and hell is, I think, kind of on earth, as I think he puts it. And it's not quite what we've been told. Heaven isn't above and hell isn't below. Everything exists here on earth, and there's a void between the supernatural and the real worlds, or something like that. A little bit more explanation would have been nice, because I was really buying into the mythology by this point. And major spoilers coming up. Smoke saves the day and takes out the head vampire. There's a real cool scene with the water and the sunrise, which leads to the fire scene, which confused me a little bit, because they've said several times that you had to kill each vampire individually in order to take them out, otherwise they just keep coming back. And taking out the head vampire wouldn't work like some vampire stories, because once Smoke takes out Remick, they all burst into flames. But that's contradictory to what we've been told before. But before this, he does offer a pretty unique proposition, saying if you join our family, we can basically balance the check against Hogwood, who is actually the Grand Wizard of the KKK, and had set up the brothers and was planning on killing them and all their attendees. Which leads to a really cool shootout involving Smoke and a group of Klansmen. I think it's probably one of my favourite parts of the film. He's got the Browning automatic rifle and blows them away. It was a very satisfying scene, because I think Klansmen are fucking retards. Smoke is shot, and there's a very cool scene where he sees his family, his ex and the baby in heaven, or the afterlife, existing alongside him at the same time. It's kind of like that scene from Gladiator when Maximus is about to die and he sees the wheat and he sees his home again. So Sammy makes it back home to his father, the preacher. He's got the remnants of the guitar, which is pretty much just the neck. And we're filled in to a bit of the backstory about the guitar. He believed it was owned by some famous or semi-famous like local musician, but it turns out it was owned by Smoke and Stack's father, and really was just a run-of-the-mill guitar played by their dad, which concludes the film. So I love the themes and metaphors of Sinners, good versus evil, but done in a different way. Family's another very strong theme of this film, as well as love. It's done in a very subliminal and very unique way compared to other films. It's, I don't know, the good and evil and the family story isn't as grandiose or this huge focal point, but it's definitely there in its own way. Because both the brothers have had failed relationships. They're both morally different people. And as the film suggests, sinners, which one's a sinner and which one isn't, because they're both sinners. But the way I saw it was they're sinners on different ends of the spectrum. One's more overtly sinful, where the other's more covertly sinful, because they both do some questionable things in the film. But everything kind of comes back around in the end. I think another theme of the film is that we're all sinners at heart. To what degree, to what severity, is a different story, because everyone in this film seems to be a sinner of some type. Well, not everybody. Some people are more obvious than others, but you couldn't really explain the sinful actions of 30 different characters in a film like that. Just the main dozen or so will do. Because Delta Slim, even he has sinned. He's an alcoholic. He's had a traumatic life. He really just wants to play the blues, make enough money so he can drink more, pretty much. So while that's not a huge sin, unlike Smoke and Stack that have probably killed people, they've robbed people, they've done some dodgy deals, his sin is more of a personal one, more covert than overt. I also love the world and the style of Sinners. I love the blending of Louisiana superstitions and the supernatural. I love the time period, 1932. Love that period film. I love the costumes. That's one thing I didn't really mention. Smoke and Stack both have a unique way of dressing. Smoke wears a blue newsboy driver's cap and I think a blue shirt and a bluish kind of suit. Stack wears a burgundy coloured fedora with a kind of a grey brown suit, burgundy kind of a suit, with a burgundy tie, which I thought was really cool, the play on colours, the red and the blue. Another thing I kind of sense in this film, God really isn't mentioned. It seems a little void of the typical heaven and hell, God and devil, good versus an evil narrative that a lot of supernatural films have, especially vampire ones. Especially some of like Bram Stoker's Dracula and a lot of those old school Dracula films. They always tied Dracula back to the devil. Remick is mentioned as being the devil by Sammy towards the end, but it's not really explained or touched upon much more than that. Yeah, Remick is referred to as the devil, but is he? There's also not a lot of religious iconography in this film besides the scenes in the church with the preacher. No one really holds a crucifix up to a vampire or anything. There's no holy water. The garlic water burns instead of holy water, which is opposite to a lot of vampire films. And the obvious classic wooden stakes, they work on these vampires, but it's not explained how. There's been a couple of vampire films where they've gone away from the traditional cliche vampire deterrence. Blade has the silver stakes. I can't remember what vampire movie it was, but one of them didn't use wooden stakes. They said, that was just something you hear in stories. And they had to kill the vampire another way, I can't remember. There's too many fucking vampire films. I also liked how heaven and hell are more tied to earth, or a supernatural realm that is accessed through music coming from the right artist. I thought that was a very cool twist on a supernatural film. It actually nearly seemed like an episode of Supernatural. That's something that they would have done. It was very cool and refreshing to see some new ideas in a vampire and supernatural horror film. It didn't go too over the top with it either. Another thing I got from the film is music is the universal language everyone can hear and understand without the barrier of words or language. Anyone from any part of the world can hear the same music and they hear exactly the same thing. If it's a song with lyrics, they might not be able to understand the lyrics, but they can still hear the music. And I like that theme of music transcending time and cultures, which was the thing that the evil spirits kind of seek out and find every once in a while. There's a musician that makes something so powerful that they have to be drawn to it. That was definitely a cool twist. And when I saw the film, there was a piece of paper on the counter and on the Sinners poster saying there are several pre-credit scenes in this film. One appears during the credits and there's a brief one afterwards. More or less what Marvel has done. And obviously Ryan Coogler directed Black Panther. The only issue I had with the post-credit scene, I'm not sure flashing the date at the bottom of the screen was that good of an idea. I thought it probably could have been done a bit more subliminal on a poster or something, because it kind of takes you out of the moment, because you kind of know it's a bit later on, and then you see the date. By this point it's pretty much already the end of the film. and it feels like another chapter being opened up. It's not even a minor complaint because the rest of the film was pretty fucking good. I also really like the world Ryan Coogler created. I love the time period. I love that world, the Mississippi Delta, the supernatural all crossing over. The only problem is I wanted more of it. The mythology is very well planned out, but there are a few flaws. One of which being, how did the head vampire survive the sun? I would have also liked a bit more backstory about him, and maybe they could explore that in a spin-off, because I don't think we've seen the end of Sinners. Well, I hope not anyway. You could do a Remick backstory. You could even go back even further than that and make it during the Mayan days, or go back to the Choctaw story and do that whole timeline. You could have it like during colonization. You could set it in the West in the late 1800s. That would be really cool. Vampires and cowboys would be a very cool combination. We've had cowboys and aliens. What about cowboys and vampires? I'd see it. Vampires and Aztecs, vampires and Mayans. The possibilities are endless, and I really hope Ryan Coogler makes a sequel or sequels to this. I also wouldn't mind another film with Smoke and Stack. They were really cool characters, and I feel like we got enough about their backstory and the world that they come from. But again, I want more, and that's what this film does really well. It just leaves you wanting more the whole time. I hope there's sequels and spin-offs. The world is very interesting, and I think it could definitely cover multiple films and timelines, just like the prologue mentions. I will have to see it a few times to get all the metaphors and meanings and all the hidden things in it. I love the sets and the design of it, the cars, the costumes. As I mentioned, the twins' burgundy and blue suits. Smoke also has a mojo bag that his ex makes for him to warn off the evil spirits. And Stack's got the gold teeth, I should say. I also had a strong feeling which of the twins would turn into a vampire and which wouldn't. Stack's gold teeth kind of makes him look a bit like a scumbag or a nefarious kind of character. Smoke's got a bit more of a darker, brooding side of him than Stack. He looks more like a gangster, more or less. I had a feeling that he might be the one that turned into a vampire, so that part wasn't really that surprising. All in all, I give Sinners a 4.5 out of 5. I really fucking enjoyed it. I don't see a lot of horror films. I do like vampire films, and this one was definitely one of my favorites. It just did something different. It wasn't afraid to experiment. I love the time period and the directing, the acting. Michael B. Jordan did a fantastic job playing dual roles. Delroy Lindo was awesome as always. And all the supporting cast all played their characters really well. The only criticisms I'd have is sometimes the cinematography is really dark. You can't really see what's going on. Even in some of the brighter scenes, there's so much shadowing, especially when characters are wearing hats, you can hardly see their faces. It reminded me of watching Tim Burton's Batman movies when I was a kid on VHS, when it'd be really dark and you could just see like the outline of Michael Keaton's face or the bat suit in the darkness. Because a fair part of this film is set at night. There's a decent amount set in the daytime as well, but I'd say a majority of it is set at night and it's very dimly lit. But it's not overly dark, you can't see anything, and it's a minor criticism. I love the music as well, the direction. It was perfectly paced and edited as well. That slow burn tension. Great film, and I highly recommend it. And I look forward to seeing it again, and I hope they make more of them.
Step back into the world of 90s true crime with the Unsolved Couple podcast. Join Ben and me, Sierra, as we dive into the iconic TV show Unsolved Mysteries, providing you the updates you missed out on as a kid. It's the perfect mix of nostalgia and true crime. Join us every Tuesday as we recap your original gateway drug into true crime, Unsolved Mysteries.
And that brings us to the end of the show. I hope you all enjoyed the episode. Live Communism is going into production pretty soon. The first episode is now set to release late June, early July. I know it was supposed to be March, but hey, life happens sometimes and you just have to roll with it. But there is a silver lining. When my computer shut itself and I had to find a new one, I brought Leon Trotsky's biography titled My Attempt at a Autobiography. I'm about halfway through and it is fucking fascinating, so I'll be incorporating that into the Liar Communism as well to go even more in depth into the world, the time period, the characters, what he was thinking and feeling while this was happening. This is not a book that is written by an historian 70 years after the event using second and third hand information. This is written by the man who was actually there, the horse's mouth, as they say, and will give us a very unique and detailed look into communism and the events surrounding the multiple revolutions and key parts of his life, which there were a few. So definitely stick around for that. It's going to be epic. Should have another show coming out in a week or 2 weeks, depending on the schedule. If you'd like to support the Truth Tank, there's a couple of things you can do. Head on over to the Facebook and Instagram page, give them a follow and a like. You can download and listen to your favourite episodes of the Truth Tank on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Pandora, Castbox, Google Podcasts if it's still around, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone you think might like the show. Help share it around and get the word out there. If you would really like to help the show grow, you can leave a 5-star rating and review on your preferred podcast player. Every review and rating helps the show grow and would be greatly appreciated by me. Once again, thank you to everyone who listened to the end. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode, but until then, I'm a Tank. This is the truth to tell.